I have a wonderful home fellowship in Bethel, and without their love, their prayers, I would not have been able to hold my cameras today. I'm so blessed. Good morning, church. My name is Mike Plascow. Our Father in heaven has blessed me by allowing me to share my testimony with you because I'm a walking miracle according to the doctors who operated on me last year. I was in JB for 4 major operations, where on the 4th operation, they virtually reconstructed my body, and the doctors thought I would never wake up from the anesthetic, and I was going to be called home to the Lord. But here I am today, talking to you in my church FGA, blessed because we have a loving, caring, almighty Father in heaven who listens to us, listens to our prayers, and cares about us. So thank you for giving me the privilege to share with you. And if I get a bit emotional, because it's quite a big story, please forgive me. I'm 72 years old, coming on to 73. I come from London, and I've been in Malaysia for over 30 years with permanent residency. I'm a professional photographer by trade, having started photography at 8 years old, taking the camera away from my father because I loved the smell of the leather and the controls. I married a Malaysian, a wonderful lady who has cared for me and looked after me more than above the normal duties of a wife when I've had so many problems. And she has blessed me with 4 wonderful children and 6 grandchildren. So this is my story to share with you. Several years ago, I got cheated very badly in business. And at that time, I was a Saturday, Sunday Christian. So you know what a Saturday, Sunday Christian is. We only go to church on Saturday and Sunday, and we only think about God on Saturday and Sunday. But because of my problems, my thoughts changed, and God became the center of my life. So I became a 7-day-a-week Christian. And when my legs come out of bed, the first person I talk to is our Father in heaven, thanking Him for a new day and asking for His guidance. So my life is controlled by Him and by the guidance He gives me. So let me now share about what happened to me. I've never been in hospital in my life before, except to visit other people. And always, I didn't really like going to hospital. So going to hospital for me was a really new experience in my life and a shock. I've always been very active as a photographer. To get the shot, you have to sometimes squat on the floor, you have to lie on the floor, you have to get into all sorts of positions when you're photographing golf, Formula One, photographing wildlife or other things. So I've never really had a problem. And then one day at home, when I planned to go to the Tokyo Olympics, I fell down in my bathroom, coughing blood and in tremendous pain, crying out to God in my bathroom. What has happened to me? And the pools of blood on the water, or on the pools of blood on the floor, made my wife panic. And because of COVID, she worried about getting an ambulance to me on time and shoved me in the car and took me to University Hospital, where they did a COVID test on me, an X-ray on me, and then shoved me in the operating theatre and discovered that the tube, which is called the esophagus, which goes from my throat to my stomach, had narrowed. So what does this mean? It means it has virtually collapsed, which means I cannot eat, drink, or swallow. I can't do the basic necessities in life. And my stomach, through a hole in my cardiophragm, had moved up, giving me tremendous pain. So I had an operation, and one of the problems was, in Malaysia, there are very few people who know how to operate on an esophagus with the problem that I had. And very luckily for me, the person who operated on me was the top student of the leading person in Malaysia, Professor Dr. Go, who was stuck in Melbourne because of COVID. So I had the best person looking after me. So for a few months, I was okay. I rested at home, but I found it a bit difficult to walk. What happened then was my esophagus collapsed again. It narrowed again. So again, I couldn't eat, drink, or swallow. So I went back to University Hospital, again terrified, because I don't know what emergency is. I'd never been in an emergency room except for my previous time. And I was really scared and talking to God, asking Him to help me. So the doctors, I then had a panel of doctors in Singapore, Australia, and Malaysia, because esophagus is very special. And they decided that I should have a tube or stent put inside me to prop up my esophagus. This is not a stent like a heart stent. This is much bigger. If you can imagine someone digging a tunnel, a road tunnel, you have to put prop-ups in the road tunnel to widen it and keep it open. So that's what they wanted to do. And they decided that I needed a biodegradable stent, and no one in Malaysia could make it. So they had it made specially on emergency in Czechoslovakia and Eastern Europe and couriered to me, and it was put in my body. And again, I was okay for a few months. And then when it biodegraded, my esophagus collapsed again. And again, I was in UH. But at that time, I had a big, big problem. And my wife and I really had to turn to God and ask God, what should we do? Because the surgeon who knew my case, who was the head of the upper gastronomical department at University Hospital, had moved down to Johor, Bahru, to a government hospital on a year's secondment to teach them how to do upper gastronomical issues. So the surgeon told me I had to come down to Johor, Bahru for a major operation. And it's a big decision because it's not round the corner from KL. It's a 4-hour drive away with my family all in KL. But my wife and I prayed and prayed and prayed on it. And we decided it was the only thing to do. Otherwise, I would just have fallen apart and probably be with the Lord. So we went down to JB, and because it was rainy season, I got an apartment next to the hospital for my wife, and I went into a government hospital for the first time in my life. A hospital over 100 years old, in an open ward, with beds that don't go up, so how to sit up. And then for the first week, in front of me, a convict or prisoner with his hands chained to the bed and police next to him on 24-hour duty on their walkie-talkies, so how to sleep. So the doctors decided I needed an operation straight away after doing X-ray and doing a scope test. Scope is a camera that goes down through your esophagus to look at the width, the thickness, and what's the matter with it. So I had my first operation, not too successful. Then I had my second operation, not too successful. The highlight of my day was seeing my wife pop round the corner with a happy face, getting down on her knees next to my bed and praying. After my fourth operation, the doctors, as I shared, because it was a very long operation, it was 16 hours with 3 hours preparation time, that I would never make it, that I was destined to go home and be with the Lord. But I woke up and I went back to my hospital, my ward bed, and my wife was so surprised because each day she tried to find out when I was in ICU what was the matter with me, and had great difficulty because of the lack of specialists who knew my case there. So when I went back to my bed, because I just had this operation, my fourth one, and my eyes were open, the doctors couldn't believe it. I had tubes going into me because I couldn't eat through my mouth, drink through my mouth, or swallow. And the tubes pumped milk with substitutes or nutritional substitutes in the milk into me every 2 hours. Otherwise, my body weight would have gone down so much, it would have been unbearable. My body weight went from 89 kilo when I went into hospital to 45 kilo when I came out of the operation, half my body weight. And I couldn't move my legs, I couldn't move my arms, and I just had these tubes go into me. And I couldn't even go to the toilet. This is a government hospital where they are overworked. It's like a railway station, in and out, with lack of staff, not because, of any fault of anybody, because of just a shortage of qualified people. So the toilet was so far, I couldn't get there on my own. And my Pampers was so full every day that my wife changed my Pampers because the nurses were so busy, and it was very uncomfortable. And then, lying on my back, I just cried to God, why didn't you let me die in the operating theatre? What have I done to deserve this? Why do I need to live? And my wife was telling me, do not talk like that. But I could hardly hear her. I couldn't really look at all the messages on my handphone. So this went on for a while. And after 30 days, one day, some thoughts went through my head after I really, really wanted to be with the Lord. And the thoughts were, with God, all things are possible. I am the year of the tiger, so fight. Also, when my father passed away in a home run by nuns in Cambridge in England, he wanted a song sung at his funeral, and that was Climb Every Mountain from The Sound of Music from Julie Andrews. So then I decided, because God gave me these three things, I was going to fight and fight. So I fought to get out of bed. I fought to get on a wheeler and wheel myself to the toilet, but I couldn't get up from the toilet, no grab handle. So my wife had to pull me up off the toilet seat, wipe me, do things beyond what a normal wife would do. And I'm blessed to have her. Otherwise, I'd never have made it. So after 65 days in hospital, the doctors turned around to me and said to me, you can now walk a little bit. You can pray. You can do your daily devotion, including our daily bread every day. You can look at your handphone. The tube has to stay, but we'll show you a wife how to give you milk 6 times a day at home. Go home, because there is a danger in the hospital that you might catch COVID. So my wife drove me home. When I got home, I got in my bed, I cried, because I never thought I'd see my bed again. I never thought I'd see soft sheets and soft pillows. And I just cried. And this went on for quite a while. And my wife told me to stop, have courage, and speak to God. So after a little while, after a few days, my wife said to me, if you don't walk, you'll be bedridden all your life. So I spoke to God, and God said, walk. So I walked with a walker with tubes in me round our car park and managed to do 1 or 2 kilometers a day, every day, then go back to bed and be helped into bed by my wife. And then I progressed from there. I decided not to do the car park anymore, but be more adventurous, go to our taman. So I went to our taman, a 5-minute drive away, and I started walking with the walker 2, 3, 4 kilometers. Then one day, God told me, no walker. And my wife was so scared that I'd fall over. So I took the walker away, and I managed to walk without the walker 2 kilometers. Praise the Lord. And then my doctor said to me, 2 kilometers not enough, Mike. Do 4. So I did 4. And then I did 6. Praise the Lord. So I managed to do 6 kilometers without a walker, to strengthen my legs. But I still had the tubes inside me. So people wouldn't see the tubes. When I walked, I hid the tubes with a towel around my mouth and round my nose. So I looked normal with a baseball cap. I didn't want people to be scared, and for me to look like an alien walking around my tummy. So then I had this problem at home. I had this milk and the substitutes and nutrition pumped into me every 2 hours, and my life was ruled by these eating habits, and I couldn't eat out my mouth. And I was praying to God for the day when I could eat properly. So one day, after going to the doctor, my doctor in Pantai, for the second time, and having a scope done, the camera going through my esophagus, he said, no more tube. And I jumped for joy. I could eat, and all the things I've been dreaming about in the hospital, my favorites, like nasi lemak, like nasi goreng, were all a reality. And I could eat very, very slowly. This carried on for a while, and my eating got better, and my strength got better. But there's one very important point. My home fellowship, Bethel, prayed for me every day. They did tower prayers, and every member of Bethel prayed and prayed and prayed for me. So without God, without my wife, without Bethel, and without church, and Elder Lou also leading prayers for me in church, I would not be here today talking to you. So my strength has now improved very slowly. According to the doctors, for my height of 171 centimeter, I should be 61 kilo, and I've reached that. And I've learned how to control my food, how to control the things that made me fat over the years, like bakute and things like that, and really how to be a better person. But the one thing I did in hospital that got prompted by God is I asked my wife for a piece of paper, and I wrote down in hospital in Johor, Bahru, all the people I'd wronged in my life. Whether I was wrong or right didn't matter, that I'd said bad words to. And I made up my mind when I got out of hospital, I was going to contact each one and say I'm sorry and get down on my knees, and I did it. Also in hospital, I learned a lot of things. One of them was when I was so desperate when I come out the operating theatre, a little pigeon landed on my ledge right by my window. And for me, for all these years, I've always thought of pigeon poop as a curse, and also the fact that pigeons were just a nuisance. But this little pigeon became my friend. And every day I said, "Hello, friend," and I prayed whilst he sat on my ledge for 5 minutes. So God has really changed my life, and changed my life for the better. And I thank God for my home fellowship, for FGA, for a wonderful wife who went beyond her call of duty, and also for a family who supported me. And most important of all, being a better person, I hope, in my realization that God is a part of your life every single day of the week. Now I can hold my cameras and I can do photography, and I've got some major projects that have fallen in my lap as I'm retired, and I need something to keep me busy and keep my mind going. And so I thank God for that, because these are things I never thought had happened. So thank you for listening. God bless you.